Okay, great. Good afternoon and welcome to Christian Concern Live. It's great to have a discussion here. I hope you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. And if you're watching live, you can comment and ask questions. And we'll look forward to all your interactions and discussions this afternoon. And do remember to follow us and subscribe to us on various social media platforms. And therefore, we can keep in touch with you as best we can. So today we've got Andrea Williams, our Chief Executive and founder of Christian Concern. Andrea, great. Good to see you.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Looking great as ever. And we've also got Carys Moseley, who's one of our key researchers, policy researchers for Christian Concern as well. Welcome to you, Carys. Great to have you on here.
Thank you.
Wanted to discuss first this hot topic about, is coronavirus, is this crisis making people more spiritual? Is it getting people to pray more, look to God more, and worship more, and that kind of thing? So, Carys, there's been a survey recently that you did some analysis of about that. Can you talk to us about what you made of it and some of what your research found?
Well, it was a survey conducted by Dieppe, which is a well-known Christian development agency, and they have experience of producing large-scale surveys like this on the same topic, actually. Obviously, they would intervene and help with disasters, and this pandemic is a disaster. And it is well known that people pray more and maybe look for some church activities and worship during in response to such a disaster. So the findings are very interesting. They've been reported in a very positive and optimistic light, I think, where they have been discussed. But there's more in-depth discussion I felt was good to have. It runs to 200 pages, so it's credit to Tier Fund for really being interested in this. I think they were really looking at how often people normally pray and whether the lockdown was a watershed moment, whether it made a difference. And I think one of the most interesting findings is that adults aged 18 to 34, since the lockdown, are more likely to pray than those who are older. And this is very unusual because this demographic, those under 35, is actually normally the most secular, the most individualistic, the most libertarian. And so this is unprecedented.
So that's very interesting. So young people, what the survey found is young people are more engaged with spiritual things as a result of this coronavirus, or responding in a more spiritual way than older people are, even though you might have thought that younger people are less Christianized than older people in terms of our culture moving away from Christianity. How do you interpret that, Carys?
Well, that's a good question.
Whoa.
More Muslim young people in Britain than there would have been, say, the last census is probably the last reliable measurement we had of a religious affiliation. And in fact, the sample size of Muslims in this survey is very small. It's only about 76, it's under 100. So usually you can't really do a lot. Statisticians believe you can't do a lot of interpreting for any group with under 100s. Yes, I'm sure that there was a surge of Muslims, especially as it's been Ramadan. But I think is it generic? Is it Christian-based spirituality? Perhaps a pick and mix, a very vague response from what people's grandparents maybe taught them by taking them to Sunday school. We don't know actually. They didn't ask. There are so many different ways you can survey.
But there's been some excitement.
I'm actually wondering whether the reality is this, and that particular demographic has been brought up in a highly secularized way. Most of their parents won't know Jesus Christ. And in the sense, there's a sense in which what they had before, the way in which the world was freewheeling, what they were running for, whether it was careers or what the world was offering them, these kind of ideas of sexual freedom, work freedom, being able to do anything they want, travel wherever they want, all the stuff that the world offers. I believe there's a reality that when they come back and close the door behind them every night, pre-lockdown, what is the meaning about what is all of this? Is it really fulfilling? And when we get into lockdown, they're crying out for what the meaning of life is. I mean, at the end of the day, each one of us, every human being, has the God-shaped hole, the God-shaped gut. The crying out, what is this life about? and coronavirus brings our own mortality right into our living spaces. So I think that demographic has not been given any clear answers in the public space, spiritual answers, and that's why there's an incredible opportunity in many ways, and a hunger, because this virus has made us ask the big questions of what am I here for? And will I die?
Yes,
it's true, but it's not really what unfortunately the survey wasn't really asking those questions, but I do believe that you're right. I think, and the reason is they were asking a slightly different set of questions at one point, where again this demographic showed up in a very interesting way. The level of trust in society, and trust surveys have been around for a long time, and quite a lot of them show that the younger you are, the less likely you are to trust certain professions or institutions. And so they looked at trust in faith leaders, government leaders, friends, family members, news, and social media. So the demographic of 18 to 34-year-olds were the ones who were least likely of all the age groups to trust government leaders or the news, mainstream, normal press, to provide information and guidance in relation to this coronavirus crisis.
Right.
So that's very interesting. Where do you go if you don't trust the news, and you might look at alternative news, but that can be full of rubbish sometimes. So where would you go? To the government? Well, what if they don't trust the government? I mean, it doesn't explore that. Well,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because there's a new moment in terms of because we're all sort of being imposed on by the government with different rules every week. We sort of can't avoid keeping in touch with the news, can we? And we have to listen to it in some ways. It's that's an interesting aspect of this. But what about people watching online services, Carys? Because there's been a lot of interest in that. How many people, and many churches are seeing more people perhaps watching online services, according to YouTube, than would even come into the building on a normal Sunday pre-lockdown. How do you view that? That's good news, is it not?
Well, of course it is, in one sense, for those who can access. Remember that not everybody has internet access. It's very easy for people like ourselves, and most people are like us. They have access, and it might be, but that's not true of everybody. And in some rural areas, it's still an issue. And we know that from the work that's being done on having the census being put online next year, so that most people fill it online for the first time. So what the survey actually found, yes, a lot of people, weekly churchgoers, just under a third started watching services online, but a smaller percentage, 4% of people who are weekly churchgoers stopped doing it, which is interesting. That suggests a deeper problem with faith. And then something like a quarter had never done that. I think overall the survey found that watching services online didn't really make up for church attendance for the reasons that I described.
Right.
And then also the related issues, has online worship really attracted that many new people? And this was really what was exciting a lot of the people who are writing this survey up quickly as it came out. And actually, what I'm studying it carefully, only 1% of people who've never attended church have started to watch online worship. And when you think about it, we always talk about the difference between the churched and the unchurched, and these that come at Christmas and Easter and so on.
Yeah.
And so, that's not a lot of people who are completely new to church. It's good, and that it translates to thousands of people, but it's not a revival. Okay. That's the take-home point, I think. It's not a revival.
Yeah.
And also, so it goes down with your church commitment. And I can understand that, because I think for people who've never been, they may think, well, I can only watch. They won't be able to verbalize this, I don't think. But people who never come along, or who only come along maybe at Christmas, they might think, well, this is for those who already know each other. And of course, it's not meant to be like that. But I think there's a lot of unpicking to do amongst Christians once this lockdown is over, to really do some heart searching and some honest research, getting to face-to-face with people, what their experience of online worship, because it's very
Tim, I don't know if it's just me, but maybe the signal's cutting out a little bit. I know that Carys is joining us from Wales, but it might just be me. But I wonder if you, Tim, were hearing all of those points. Just repeat them if you were hearing them clearly for everyone who's joining us for live stream, just in case they're experiencing the same thing as the thing.
I heard it all very clearly indeed. Maybe if somebody else didn't, maybe one of our monitors could just tell me if they think it's coming through as well. I heard it all very clearly, Andrea. So thank you for that, Carys.
Great, okay.
But moving to you, Andrea, I think you sort of hinted that already. What do you think churches can do? And sort of we've all learned about how to use social media, and including Christian Concern, right? We're doing live streams for the first time as a result of this. Where do we take this? Is this a great opportunity for the church to reach out to people in this kind of way?
Well, I think that maybe it's my internet and not Carys's, because I'm not hearing everything that you're saying either, Tim. But let me continue with what I think that question was in this new world, in this new way, what is it that we should be doing? Well, I think we should be getting ready at this point. We should be doing all that we can to streamline services, to be in community online. But we also must not just settle for that at this particular moment. It's a great opportunity to think about how we do church, how those people that are coming and joining us online could be reached immediately after this, how we're going to be the lifehouses and the lighthouses, just as we have been places, many of us, to provide food banks at this time. Let's think about how we can be the healing houses for the lost, for the lonely, for the depressed, for those that are confused. Why don't we open up our churches to be those places where people can come during the day so that they come and meet the Lord Jesus Christ, the living hope? Let's think about how we hold on to our children who've been having at home. How are we going to ensure their schooling and their love for the Lord Jesus Christ going forward? How should we reach more children in our communities? Let's really be thinking about that, because one of the sad things about all of this is that the churches have been relegated to a non-essential service. So obviously getting food, going to the supermarket is an essential service. They even say going to the off licenses, that can be open. But we know that we're not just flesh, we're body, mind, spirit. The spiritual sustenance, that kind of heart cry, the reason why the 18 to 34-year-old bracket is crying out is because they're in search of their maker, their creator, and the rescue of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Yes. So there is demand for churches to open, isn't there? But the government said that the very earliest that places of worship, on Saturday, they didn't even mention churches in the document that was released on Monday. The very earliest that places of worship will be allowed to open will be July the 4th, which is in line with cinemas, and it's like the very last phase, unfortunately, of church opening. I understand that there are discussions happening about maybe allowing churches to open with for private prayer or with some other restrictions around it, something like that. Carys, what do you think about where that's going?
Well, I think it's important to look internationally, because obviously governments bounce ideas off each other about reopening. I think it's not just reopening for private prayer. It's I think one of the big topics right now, at least in the Western world, is can churches reopen and allow people to sing? So allow congregational singing. And in some countries, like in Germany, and in at least one Canadian province, I think it's Alberta, they're saying yes, but no. So yes, you can open, but no, you can't sing, because that would involve possible risk of spreading the virus. And we already knew that there was a risk in terms of the sign of the peace and handshaking, but singing, that's actually a very big deal. And I think many people would feel uncomfortable with, or feel that it was strange to be in a service and to not be able to sing at all for various reasons.
Yes, and it's difficult, isn't it, to decide what counts as singing, and I don't know what the scientific evidence is behind that as well, and how strong it is as well. So there's a discussion to be had there. There's an interesting comment from somebody who's obviously watching from Canada here, Janine Teresa Leclerc, saying here in Canada, pastors are fined hundreds and hundreds of dollars while mosques are allowed to have their call out to prayer publicly. Canada is jailing Christians, but we must be strong and defend our faith no matter what the cost. Well, great to have you watching from Canada there. And I've seen that story about that happening in Ontario, I think, isn't it? And we've had some mosques be allowed for the first time to broadcast the call to prayer here in London as well. And I wrote about that last week on the Christian Concern website as well. So we need to start preparing, obviously, as churches to be getting back in some way, and maybe with social distancing. But another idea is to meet open air, of course, which there's a lower risk of a spreading infection open air. What about that idea, Andrea? You able to comment on that?
I'm afraid I didn't quite hear that, so I think I am the problem here in terms of the internet connection. Can you repeat the question for me, Tim?
Yeah, sorry, I was thinking about if we meet open air as churches, right? In our buildings, it can be quite hard to social distance, but open air, we can, have some social distancing open air, but there's less risk of infection spreading there. And I think that churches can start to think about, we won't be meeting probably till July as it looks at the moment. We can start to think about meeting open air if we've got space to do that somewhere. And families can, I don't need to social distance from my wife or my children, but the families can social distance from each other. So there's something in that, isn't there, do you think?
I think that there is something in that. And I think there's a reality that if we can open up supermarkets and we can find a way of shopping together, then we should be able to find a way of working together. These things have to be possible. And these things are also really important because the government should not just see us as an entertainment brand, as a club of people. The church historically has been at the heart of all the major institutions of public life. We've been at the heart of education. We are at the heart of education. We are at the heart of government. We need to be, we are at the heart of local life. We are at the heart of community work and social work. And so we need to find a way of opening up our premises to serve the heart of the community, practically by food banks, but also to serve those that are feeling lonely, to give them a place to come in safely and be in community. This is vital, and these are things that we can surely do. All that we need to do is offer a way through, offer a safe way through. And of course, this can be done. We need to believe it, we need to solve it, and we need to speak into it to those people that can help us to make the difference. We need to lead people out of fear.
Yeah, and I think we're getting comments here about how churches are doing Zoom meetings and all of that, as my church is as well. I think we're all learning about how to do that, aren't we? And that is a good way of connecting, but it still doesn't quite meet. There's a great passage, isn't it, in 3 John about how I want to meet you face to face, and I think there's a lesson. We do want to do that. We want to meet each other face to face, don't we? Carys, have you got more thoughts about how churches can get back into meeting with each other and how the practicalities of that?
I think there's lots of things that churches can do. They can, the obvious one that's been floated already is having more services, but with fewer people, so perhaps a limit on the number of people, and that's something that can be done. You'd have to look obviously at the weather. There's a lot of rain in Britain, and moving to the winter, it would not always be practical to worship in the open air. I mean, now is the time to do open air worship, really. And it has been done. There was a video of Christians from Moravia, I think, beginning of the lockdown, who had organized social distancing choir outside of their building, in front of it. And that was very good.
Yeah.
But as I said, if it's going to rain hard or be very, very cold, you've got to think about people with disabilities as well, the elderly and so on. So we can't just say we're going to do open air as our main Sunday worship. It would be a creative way of reaching more people and being, what Andrea said, being at the heart of the local community.
Right. Okay, there's a question here. Jamie Winch on Facebook. Is there a risk the church gives the state too much power? If we concede and are subservient to the state, does this not raise serious implications for our generation and the future generations, i.e. leading to more future abuse? Andrea, what do you think about that point there? Are we giving the state too much power, Andrea?
The reality is this, that in a time of an emergency, then extraordinary things happen. And so we were looking, and we were prepared for the government to lead on this with the nation at large, the people at large. When this came, we knew that extraordinary things would have to occur. But what never must be surrendered at such a point is vigilance over what is happening. When extreme measures can come in because of an emergency situation, we might be prepared to forego certain freedoms for a short time. But those freedoms need to be continually monitored and looked at. And there's a sense in which if we're not careful, we will surrender or permit the government to foist upon us the lost freedoms that we never wanted, or go way beyond anything that we could imagine. And I think that that is something we truly need to question at this time. And also historically, the way in which the church and the government have interplayed in most free nations is this, that the church has been viewed as a place where there is self-governance, a little bit like the family is a place that self-governs. Then the church is a place that self-governs with no minimal interference from the state.
Yeah.
And I think the interesting shift here is not so much what the state is absolutely telling the church that we need to do, but rather in many cases, a surrender by the church to the state, saying, we'll do whatever you have us do, instead of offering the solutions and being part of being this piece of rescue and help into the community. So I think that's something that we've perhaps not played as well as we might as the Christian people in this nation, as the churches in this nation. Yeah.
Okay. I want to move on now to talk about a story that came out this week about the abortion industry. It was reported that abortion giant Marie Stopes received millions of pounds of funding from a pornography company, president of a pornography company. And it's interesting because it appears there's a link here between abortion and pornography. Carys, do you think that's right? There's a link between abortion and pornography?
I think it's quite obvious. It is logical, isn't it? I mean, the interesting thing for me is since before the actual lockdown, as we could see, policy was going to change, but all going to be restricted. The porn industry ramped up its activity. It went, so Pornhub is the biggest site on the internet. They went and gave, I think it was an offer of free porn to people in Italy who are already locked down. They've done that in several countries. There's been a spike in people watching, and I think these revelations, there have been similar revelations as the story we've just been talking about before. Pornography fundamentally corrupts people's affections, not just their mentality, the way they see people, the way they feel and order their affections, their emotions. And if the consequence is unruly behavior, unruly sexual behavior of whatever kind, are people's affections not ordered towards starting a family or towards caring for an unexpected child? So I think in that bigger, the emotional setting of it is relevant.
Yeah. I mean, like you say, of course, the other side of increasing spirituality, which I mean is, I think, some of the case, and there's something good about that, but there is also increasing pornography, sadly, as a result of the lockdown or linked into the lockdown. We've got a comment here saying Pornhub gave their premium service for free during lockdown in the whole of Europe, which I think is what Carys is referring to there. But there has been a call by a bunch of international charities for credit card companies to block payment for pornographic sites. That would be a big step forward, would it not, Carys? That would make it very difficult for the porn companies to get money online. What do you think about that?
Well, it would be great if that became a reality. But I think what's frustrating to watch all this is how it's clear the porn industry is lobbying behind the scenes. And I feel like maybe that's never really been investigated properly in this country. The influence it has in various ways. Why do we never get anywhere?
No internet.
With why do we never get anywhere with pushing for a decline in this kind of product? Why is it that we've got to the situation we are with relationships and sex education? I do ask myself whether elements of the porn industry lobby for that. I mean, I have no evidence for that, but it's again, emotionally, logically, you do ask questions. We need to be asking far more questions.
Wow. Yes. And of course, it's shocking as well, isn't it? The survey, 94% of children by the age of 14 have been exposed to some porn. 94%. I mean, that's shocking. And the thing is, these images, you can't get rid of them. They imprint on your mind, don't they? They impact you forever, and they change your perception. It's so disturbing. Andrea, what's your comments on this whole thing?
Well, porn, of course, we know is hugely damaging to our young people. The access to it, generally to family life as a whole, and it's something that we need as the church to really be considering, and we need to be porn proofing our children and the next generations because of the impact it has on their future relationships. And I think again, this thing that we were talking about earlier about people turning to God, actually people crying out, it's because all of these things do not satisfy. They become empty. They're addictive. It gets worse and worse, and then there's no pleasure but just an addictive cycle. They're wrecking. And again, in terms of evangelism, in terms of speaking and serving the community, one thing that we really need to speak out on and provide programs on is another way, is an alternative way. Think about this as we move forward coming out of lockdown. Are we going to be ready as a people to say we've had our children at home as they come back into school? We don't want them to be taught things that actually normalize the idea of porn. We don't want them to know about the accessibility of porn, but rather we would be seeking to promote them to purity, to a proper respect for their bodily integrity, for who they are, made in the image of God. Actually give them a proper respect for the importance of the sexual union between one man and one woman, and that this should be held for marriage. These sorts of things we should be speaking of vibrantly as things that are beautiful and freeing and good. And I think the other result, I mean, the point about the whole pornography industry as well, and one of the things that I found interesting in this whole period is that it's not at all surprising that it's linked to abortion, and that porn, money that's made out of porn will be put into the porn industry, the abortion industry, which is also a money-making industry. And both of those have idolized this idea of a woman, a man, they can do what they want with their body, however they want, provided it's consensual. And for the woman, she can do whatever she wants with her body. She has absolute integrity. So if let's say there's an unplanned pregnancy as a result of sexual behavior that perhaps comes around because there's been links to pornography and sexualization and so on and so forth, that you have the porn industry making these partnerships with the abortion industry. At the start of this lockdown period, the chief executive of the British Pregnancy Advisory Service, Anne Furedi, said that 44,000 women would need access to home abortion, to DIY abortion, that's the taking of two pills, within the first 3 months of lockdown. Now, I find what's interesting about that statistic, first of all, is that, of course, if we're self-isolating and social distancing, then there's a sense in which the casual hookup culture is should be closed at this present time. But
Yes, and there has been a decrease in STIs, hasn't there, from this? It's quite that's quite an interesting aspect of this. Sexually transmitted diseases have gone down very markedly, very significantly as a result of the lockdown. It's interesting. Anyway, carry on, Andrea. Yes.
Yes. So, and she has been lobbying, saying that this must happen. And ironically, she's been saying that this must happen for the safety of the women who need to access abortions, because they mustn't go on public transport, for the safety of the clinicians who are in the abortion centres. And the fascinating statistic, and it's real, is that the deaths by COVID is somewhere around, is it 34,000 today?
Around about that, 30 something,
It's around that in the United Kingdom. And she is saying we need to make access to 44,000 abortions as easy as possible, as easy as taking paracetamol. Women need to have access to these abortion pills as easily as they have access to abortion, as easy as they have access to paracetamol. The stats, the global stats at the moment for deaths by abortion so far this year are in the region of 15.5 million. 15.5 million abortions across the world so far this year.
Wow.
And you know what? Those stats, the world just carries on. The world just carries on. All those people that didn't get, all those babies, all those unknown people that didn't get a chance at a first breath on a ventilator, let's say, even.
Yes.
Yeah. So and around 215,000 deaths by COVID across the world, and yet the whole world is shut down.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be extraordinary if for one moment we considered the death toll by abortion? And wouldn't it be interesting if we considered what it is across the world and what it is in our nation that has so altered our minds and our consciences that we would think that that mothers would think that the answer to an unplanned pregnancy is taking the life of their unborn child. And the reality is this.
So Andrea, so we're moving on there, obviously, to talk about the judicial review, which is coming up in the courts next week, isn't it, on Tuesday?
Yes, a very important case.
And we're challenging the decision by the government. You were just sort of outlining there some of the rationale that people tried to give for it, to allow DIY home abortions with a simple telephone interview where a woman is very vulnerably able to be sort of coerced along into this. And the government having promised in Parliament, we're not going to make any changes, we're not going to allow this kind of thing during the coronavirus crisis. It would be wrong. They even said in Parliament it would be wrong to actually make a change like this without proper parliamentary scrutiny. And then as soon as they put Parliament into recess, the following Monday, it was the following Monday, they said, right, this change is going to happen. I mean, it's extraordinary, isn't it, Andrea? So talk to us about the JR, the judicial review, and what we're challenging, how we're challenging that.
Yeah, well, first of all, I would really ask those that are tuning in to get alongside us on this, to really read up all about it on our website, come behind us, support us, pray for us. We would really value that. We care passionately about the women and the unborn children in our nation, and indeed the dads. We want a different way in this nation. But what is extraordinary is about all of this, and the reason why we are seeking a judicial review of this decision of the Department of Health, is that it was quite clear that the ministers of state did not want a change in the abortion law. Matt Hancock said that on the floor of the House of Commons, and a day later, the week that we went into lockdown, and Lord Battelle said it the following day, because their women needed to have access to medical supervision, they needed to have care. This was a serious matter and needed to be properly and medically monitored.
Yeah.
But we know that a change to the provision of so-called home abortions, early medical abortions is what they call them, was being really hard pushed for by the abortion lobby, particularly Mary Stopes and particularly BPAS.
Yeah.
And despite those matters being said on the floor of the House of Commons and the House of Lords, it would seem that over the weekend, such pressure was put on the government ministers and on the Department of Health, presumably by the abortion industry, what the civil service have been hearing, that we then end up on Monday, and this has been previewed by the Sunday Times the day before, we then end up with the government U-turning and saying we are going to extend the provision of these two pills. The first one kills the fetus, the second one expels it. We're going to extend provision, and we're going to say that a woman's home can be essentially a medical centre where abortion can take place. This
with no
flies in the
supervision,
face.
with no supervision at all.
No supervision, but also, you know, it's fascinating, but also it's wrong, cruel, evil. This notion that, just as if I'm speaking to you, Tim, right now, and there could be anything happening to me, and I'm in this position of that I speak to someone, not even a doctor. It's not a doctor that people are speaking to. It's somebody who's sitting opposite, perhaps a nurse, perhaps some kind of clinician in an abortion provider centre, will listen to me, perhaps even by telephone, perhaps not even see my face, and will sign off for these pills to occur. And that all of that was done, all of that was made possible because the abortion industry was saying the women need this access to this for their own safety.
Yeah.
When in fact it's the opposite. So it's very serious that we look at how such a huge change to the Abortion Act could have been made without proper parliamentary scrutiny, and when in fact the government had been absolutely clear that this wasn't going to happen, not once but twice. And had already withdrawn the weekend before regulations which it would seem have been published by the civil service, thinking, you know, the reality was, it would seem that the civil servants, the Department of Health, had published guidance, but that was immediately removed the week before, saying clearly that no change was going to be made, and for it all to be put back the following weekend. This is serious stuff, particularly when lives are at stake. And I think that one of the hard things here is that what people are going to say is, oh, it's the pro-lifers again, it's the Christians again, women just need access to easy abortion. And I think what I want to say again to those that are watching, those that are with us here, of course it is a pro-life issue, of course it is a Christian issue, but people want to dismiss it as if it's just a very marginal matter that interests a few pro-lifers and a few Christians, when in fact we have to begin to talk about the beauty and value of a woman's life, of the impact on the woman, of the impact on the father, and of course on the life that will not be born. We need to think again. Is the life of a child to be removed as easily as we pop a paracetamol?
Well, it isn't as easy as that, though, is it, Andrea? It's not as easy as that, is it? It's actually medically dangerous and disturbing, and people quite often have blood loss. And there was a case of someone dying from taking these pills in India only the other day, because of no supervision, taking them at home, etc. And you end up seeing the fetus come out of your body, or it's not like taking paracetamol, even though people might want to present it that way.
Exactly. That's exactly how it's being presented by the abortion industry, and that's a lie. The abortion industry talks about what you will excrete. I might not be getting this exactly right, but it says 6 weeks is the size of a lentil, at 7 weeks is the size of a blueberry, at 8 weeks is the size of a raspberry.
Yeah.
Well, you know, that
Yeah.
lentil, that blueberry, that raspberry is a living human being. We will want that size, Tim.
Yeah. So there's a question here from Pete Chris Hodge on Facebook. What leverage could the abortion industry have to apply such pressure? And do we have an answer to that, Andrea? Because it seems like the government said, no, we're not going to do this. They even said in Parliament, right, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do this. And then somehow the government changed its mind over a weekend, having said in Parliament, we're not going to do it. They went and did it. And this must be pressure from the abortion industry. How do they have so much pressure? Why did the government bow down to that?
Yeah, well, Pete, what I'd say is please watch this space. You can access the trial live on Tuesday, and I think that things are going to be revealed in that on Tuesday. So I'd say, Pete, please join us and watch that trial live if you can on Tuesday. But to say this, and I think it's a great challenge, there is a cultural conditioning that says abortion is the answer, is the solution to an unplanned pregnancy. And culturally, the organs of state, the mechanisms, even the medical profession, even the Royal College of GPs and the obstetrics and gynecologists, even the health advisors all seem to treat abortion as a good. Within the civil, there's a sense in which the official channels, the policymakers, the mantra within the government agencies says abortion is good, it's a solution.
Yeah.
And I think that when you have that culture, there is an inevitable, and the abortion industry is pushing on an open door and views those that resist as a little extreme block that just needs to be silenced in a sense.
Yeah. I think Carys, you want to say something about this? You've got something to say about this.
Yeah, just a general comment of background to why the government is pushing ahead, because other governments are pushing ahead too. There's never been such a threat to the whole culture of, the disarray that's come with the sexual revolution since the Abortion Act as the lockdown. So 53 years of the gradual increase in all that behaviour, plus having more nightclubs, more pubs and so on, has fueled all of this. And I think they were panicking. The press was talking around the beginning of the lockdown that the abortion industry never faced such a threat. You've seen the drop in STIs. The sexual health professionals are trying to be positive, but they're really wanting people to go and, sleep around again, which is a dreadful way to put it. So I think that's why they're panicking. And the question then is, why are they so invested in continuing this whole industry of abortion?
The government, do you mean? Is that what you mean?
Government generally.
Right.
What's in it? The countries they run.
Yeah. Well, we'll find out more, presumably, in the case on Tuesday, and we look forward to seeing how that plays out. Do pray for us. Do pray for the case on that on Tuesday. Do watch out for information about it. There'll be some in our weekly news email that comes out today. If you're not already signed up for that, do sign up for that on our website, christianconcern.com/hello, and follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter and all these various mediums. Thank you for joining us today. We've run out of time now, I think, but it's been a great discussion. Thank you particularly to Carys and to Andrea for discussing and chatting very informedly about these various issues. Thank you for all your comments and questions. I hope we managed to get
to dodgy internet, everyone.
Sorry, Andrea promises to have better internet next time, and we'll try and do this again next Monday at 1 o'clock. So look forward to seeing you again then, and have a great weekend. All right, see you. Bye-bye.